A wave of alleged Syrian military defections to Turkey was reported June 25th. Meanwhile, Turkey is preparing itself for consultations with NATO over how to respond to the June 22nd downing of a Turkish jet by Syrian forces. The turn of events over the past several days has provided the United States, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia with the most leverage to date in dealing with both the Syrian and Iranian regimes. But it's not clear yet that either is ready to concede in a negotiation to avoid a military engagement in Syria. One general, 2 colonels, 2 majors, 1 lieutenant, and 33 soldiers of the Syrian army have reportedly defected over an unspecified period of time with their families to Turkey. The reported defections followed the June 21st defection of a Syrian Sunni Air Force pilot to Jordan and the alleged follow-on defections of 3 Sunni pilots. For the regime of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to have a fighting chance of holding onto power, it needs to maintain cohesion among the Alawite-dominated military. The Air Force defections represent a potential turning point. The Air Force is the most elite branch of the military, but it faces a very key vulnerability in that the majority of its pilots are Sunni. We are watching very closely for signs that follow-on defections spread beyond Sunni forces to Alawites who could start betting on regime collapse. But the Syrian regime has the additional problem now of dealing with the fallout from the shoot-down of a Turkish RF-4E reconnaissance jet by Syrian forces. The fate of the Turkish pilots remains unclear, and Turkey is facing heavy domestic pressure to respond. The nature of that response will be discussed June 26th at a NATO meeting that was called by Turkey under Article 4, which permits a member to seek consultation from other members in contemplating a response. There's now potential for Turkey to invoke Article 5 of the NATO Charter, which says that an attack on any member shall be considered an attack on all. Turkey is not deciding its response independently. If Turkey is to respond militarily beyond a gesture, it will require the anti-air defenses of the U.S. military to break the Syrian military, and that support is not guaranteed. The United States and Turkey are now facing a critical question. They've already committed to a strategy of trying to collapse the regime from within by covertly arming the rebellion. Do they now want to go all the way in and try to finish the job? Or is there another option? At this point of the Syrian uprising, this is the most leverage that the US, Turkey, and others have had in dealing with Syria and Iran. The United States and its allies want to use a regime collapse in Syria to undermine Iran's foothold in the Levant region. They can now psychologically convince Tehran and Damascus that a military intervention is in the cards. And therefore, the only way to avoid that fate is through a tough negotiation focused on creating a political exit for the Assad clan or creating the conditions for a coup. A negotiation over a political exit would pair well with a parallel negotiation taking place between the US and Iran over sanctions and the Iranian nuclear program. But will Iran and Syria be convinced? That will all depend on the level of military posturing we see out of Turkey and the US and the level of instability we see within the Syrian regime's inner circle over the next several days.